Once again, my name is Beatrice Edu. Thank you very much for joining us today. Now, Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has described allegations of conflict of interest in government's recent 15-year bond sale as mischievous and ignorant. The minority at a news conference this week criticized government over how it went about raising over $2 billion from investors. They say the transaction is shrouded in secrecy, cooked to favor one investor, and didn't have parliamentary approval. But speaking to journalists after an engagement with investors in Washington, D.C. last night, the vice president said it's unfortunate for such comments to come from people who should know better.
The strategy of reprofiling is just replacing shorter-term debt with longer-term debt and more expensive debt with less expensive debt. And this is what we started doing a couple of weeks ago, and it has proven very successful, and we hope to continue doing that. Ultimately, to be able to bring down your debt burden, there are two things you need to do. You need to grow your economy. When you grow the economy, it expands, your revenues grow, your GDP grows, and of course your debt to GDP ratios will fall, so the burden of the debt will also fall. Strategically, you also have to bring fiscal discipline to bear. If you bring fiscal discipline to bear and manage your expenditures relative to your revenues, it means you are going to borrow less. And when you borrow less, the debt increases less. So you've got to have a combination of strategies where you're increasing your revenues, controlling your expenditures, bringing down your deficits, you're growing your economy, you're managing your exchange rate so that there is stability in it so that it doesn't add to the debt and so on.
Now, the Vice President adds that the issuance of the 15-year bond is part of government's plans to use long-dated papers to reduce the public debt.
It shows a lack of understanding. The minority have never understood this economy, and it's just amazing that people on that side who were actually in charge of managing the economy will be making such statements. It shows ignorance. It really shows ignorance, and I am so sad when I hear that from people who should know better. And so they need to understand. Maybe they should read a little. They need to understand what took place. We issued a CD bond. There's no secrecy to the matter. It was very well invested in. The holders have invested many times in Ghana. The bonds that were in place when SECTEC issued them, they bought them. 24% interest rate. This time is 19%. So we are doing even much better. But this is what politics has been reduced to, trying to say things which really have no basis and are, basically wrapped in ignorance. So I'm a bit sad for Ghana and for them, because they are really demonstrating a lot of ignorance of the process of management of this economy. And I think that is where we are.
And you heard the Vice President there, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. Now, tomorrow, 22nd April 2017, is International Earth Day. The day is celebrated worldwide every year to serve as a reminder of the need to help preserve the earth and its ecosystems as the provider and sustenance of life. The theme for 2017 is environmental and climate literacy. To mark the day, there is a global March for Science activity being held across the world, including here in Ghana. Joining us in the studio are two individuals to discuss specific issues about the environment and that we all need to pay attention to. Divine Agboli is project coordinator of the group Hispers of Nature, and Jane Norrin Davis is lead organizer for the Accra March for Science. Lady and gentlemen, thanks for joining us on News Desk.
Thank you.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So let me start with you, Divine. Tell us a bit more about International Earth Day.
Okay, so International Earth Day, it's a global event where we put a spotlight on issues affecting the environment. We do advocacy, we do discussions, and we do practical activities to, help us, recover the menace that affects the environment. Yes.
And for Jane, why is it such an important day to the extent that it is actually recognized by the UN?
Well, this day was started in 1970 when I was actually back in university, and it's been a long-term focus. This year, the Earth Day Alliance Network has partnered with the March for Science. So it's a little bit different day today. It's always April 22nd, but this day it has March for Science tagged in with it.
But to you, Divine, yes, why is it important at all that, you know, that we take interest in preserving the Earth?
You know, I say that the Earth exists to protect you and I. If we don't protect it, it can give us the best it should. We exist because the environment or the Earth exists. Therefore, we have a mandate, a moral mandate, we have a spiritual mandate, we have whichever mandate to ensure that the environment is, you know, kept in the best of conditions at all times.
And Jane, Divine is just talking about everything we need to do to ensure that the Earth is kept safe. At individual level, what can be done to ensure that the Earth is preserved?
I think something that we're focusing on is political action as well. Certainly here in Ghana, there have been petitions and a lot of network focus on various issues. Probably Divine can give you more on that type of thing, on the local issues.
Yes.
No, but even before we talk about the local issues, I mean, this is something that is marked worldwide. What are some of the issues that have come up that you think individuals must really come on board to deal with?
Climate change, of course. It is going to be a major focus of our discussions tomorrow. The Paris Agreement. We are focusing on, ocean pollution, recycling, all of the things that you know of the environment. The March for Science movement is primarily focused on research-based policymaking, and that's something we'll stress as well.
So it's kind of a march to influence policymakers to make changes in how, you know, the environment is handled.
That is part of it, yes, and just to make sure that those changes are based on science.
And Jane, through the question back to you, regarding Ghana, what issues have you identified that you think should be focused on this year?
Great. So there's so much talk about galamsey, illegal mining. It's a hot issue, and I'm excited about the fact that everyone is really getting involved so far as this issue is concerned. The media, the clergy, civil society, students, everyone seems to be on top of this issue, and I think it's a good call. So it's going to play really, really big, you know, as part of activities for tomorrow. I mean, the presentations and the afternoon section as well.
And actually, you mentioned the media. If you're aware, today is Red Friday, declared by the Coalition of Media Against Galamsey, so everyone must be in red. But I'm just wondering, what is Whispers of Nature doing specifically to deal with this?
Yes, so Whispers of Nature is an environmental NGO. We are mandated to, we have the mission to promote, you know, environmental literacy, to engage, you know, the youth in practical activities with a creative twist, all in line to, you know, arrest the environmental menace we have, in our country. Yes.
I'll come to you very shortly again, but I just want to find out from Jane, you are the lead organizer for the Accra March for Science event.
Yes.
Looking at the theme for this year, how is that going to influence the march, the event this year?
Yeah, actually our march is not really as much of a march. It becomes a teach-in, which is the initial segment of the march in Washington, the Mother March. We're part of 571 satellite marches. We will be looking at a wide range of things, and the major focus, I think I should say, is the idea of evidence-based policy formation. And we'll move on from there, do all sorts of events.
And Divine, I was just talking about the theme for the year, and we know that it's environmental and climate literacy. What does it mean, and what are we seeking to achieve with that, specifically in Ghana?
Okay, so there are so many issues affecting our environment. We have over 25 million citizens. Not everyone is really upbeat about the issues affecting the environment and how they can get involved in to solve them. So the theme is to throw light on practical, creative ways by which we can solve, the environmental menace we are faced with. Yeah. So the afternoon session is going to have a lot of such, practical activities. We're going to have urban garden display. We're going to have recycle art exhibitions and installations as well.
Do I take
in the morning session? We will have an absolute presentation that deals with science literacy and environmental literacy.
You're talking about the big event tomorrow now?
Yes.
Sure. All right, go ahead.
Well, one of the presentations will certainly follow the theme, and that's on science and climate literacy. We will have people coming in from Zoom Lion will be coming in to talk about recycle, and they're going to be sending a beach cleanup crew. We have a Lincoln school teacher who will be talking about the necessity for basic research. She also works on elephant research in Mole, so she's familiar with that. We have a group from TGI talking about solar lighting using inverted liter bottles to bring light into corrugated roof shacks. Also, we'll have a presentation on STEM for women and on the Paris Agreement. Cody Aziz is coming in. She does the chairmanship of Environment 360. She was a recipient of the UNICEF award called Reach for Change, and her group does a lot of education of children, so that will certainly be an important part of it. Of course, Joseph.
Exactly, I was actually coming to that. We know that Joy News' Joseph Opoku-Gakpo plus Daily Graphics Kenneth Ashigbe will be will be speaking at the event.
Right.
You've just given us a little bit of what will happen, but tell us more about, their presentations and everything that we need to expect.
Right. Well, so we'll start at 10 with presentations. Those will all be indoors after last night's rain. I think it's probably important to say that. We have everything under tent in the afternoon as well. We'll be doing a community-generated mural. We'll be led by a professional artist. We'll be using recycled materials to build this mural to kind of put across the whole idea of recycling. We'll have a drama on the insidious effects of plastics in the area. We will also have a political room where we will have videos, policy papers, petitions for people who want to make a statement. We'll have vendors with recycled products and books on science, children's activity tables. We'll also, I think Joseph is part of, it's kind of interesting to bring Joseph in because he's part of the Cornell Alliance for Science, which is one of the 270 international partners of the March for Science. So he kind of came in through that route.
Exactly.
And talking about presentations, I'm going to do a presentation on urban gardening. It's quite coincidental that the government launched food for
planting for food and jobs.
It's quite coincidental. Urban gardening is one of the activities Hipsters of Nature is promoting. We got able sponsorship from the GIZ and other stakeholders, Mothers Club, from NEMA. It's really going well. I think it's in the right direction. We live in some kind of an urban jungle of a sort, concrete city of a sort. There's a need to have a lot of greenery, green ambience, and it's good for our health. It's the best.
We're just a few hours away from celebrating this big day. What will be your advice to Ghanaians looking at how to live earthly friendly, life? Yeah.
I love to do basics. So stop spitting, stop open defecation, stop littering. Don't throw litter around.
But spit is part of life. So if you say stop spitting, how exactly do you mean?
You don't need to spit just anywhere. You need to do it properly. Yes, we need to live more responsible lives as citizens. We need to take charge of the issues affecting our environment. And let me just say that you just have to start and take part in saving our environment. Today is the time, not tomorrow, not next year, but today. We really have to. and we must start. This was said by Malina in Philippines.
I might say, just for technical reasons, we're having this at the Afia Beach Hotel, which when we first organized this, this group grew somewhat out of the Women's March for Washington. And I turned to Helen List. She was one of the people who volunteered to help with this. She volunteered her place, very eco-friendly hotel, so that's where everything's going to take place tomorrow. We are also going to be giving away, following up on your gardening thing, we're giving away seeds from the GISS Club at Lincoln Community Schools, prepared seed packets, and those will be given away tomorrow as well.
Your final words, Jane?
My final words are: be there, keep your head into environmental concerns. It's very important that we think about this Earth Day every day.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And Divine Agboli, we've been talking about International Earth Day, which will be marked tomorrow. And you just heard Divine Agboli. He is a project coordinator of the group Whispers of Nature. And Jane Norrin Davis is lead organizer for the Accra March for Science event. Moving on to some other stories, some workers of the Ghana Railway Corporation have been accused of selling off the land along the railway tracks to squatters who are building settlements there. Residents at Nungwa Barrier here in Accra say apart from the risks they are exposed to, they are being a nuisance to the community. A visit to the area by Joy News on Thursday morning revealed some of the structures are sited right along the tracks, reaching the 100-meter distance required by law. Maxwell Agbagba has details.
I'm from Belgium.
Oh, okay.
I'm from Belgium.
Wow.
And when I was going to retire at 60...
When 70-year-old Franz Stoops was nearing retirement 10 years ago, he decided to leave Belgium for Ghana purposely to relax and change his environment. What used to be a beautiful green zone behind his home has now been taken over by brownish corrugated roofing sheet 7 as a roof for about 200 makeshift structures housing squatters in this suburb referred to as Nungwa Barrier. Residents living in the community are complaining about the nuisance posed by the squatters.
Say I have my wall, and now the latest, let me say the small city that they built just behind my wall, it's maybe only 1 meter like this away from my wall. He said because of his services for the railway company, they offered him that piece of land and he is the owner. I said, oh, how is that possible? See, it can, in my opinion, I'm not a Ghanaian, but I think it cannot be possible.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine that the railway company is giving away strategic ground. Because they must be thinking not for today or tomorrow, but in 10, 20, 30 years when they are having very sophisticated railway system. Then they have to, I do not know how they are going to do that.
These shacks belonging to squatters living along this rail line started from 1, moved to 2 to 3. Now they are in their hundreds. Residents living in this community say they are posing serious discomfort to them. What is more worrying is that they have the tacit approval of some unscrupulous persons working for the Railway Company Limited. Another resident, Manasseh Oliver, corroborates the story about the sale of the lands by staff of the Railway Corporation.
They are the main people who are selling the place to the people, giving them a piece of paper that is a certificate from railway. So, because of that, you see, it keeps sometimes they will eat. Yes, sometimes they will eat themselves and throw it inside my house. Loud music. Sometimes you hear them fighting. When they smoke, they are listening. You hear them fighting with knives. I'll kill you. I'll do this. 2 weeks ago, a guy came around claiming he's a chief. He said they should come to him, prepare a few money and then schnapp for him. They will stay here forever. So they also prepared those things and went to the guy. So this has kept on going on. Now they have a guy who lives here. They used to call him Red. He is the one railway people have been using him.
Sule Salia has been accused as the middleman between the scrupulous railway workers and the squatters.
Me, I will take you to court. But what they bear it in mind, said, I will take you to court. So when I want to tell them to leave.
Yeah, and then to move on the minimum and now we come to make catch on 10 years. And they do it my own.
Now, Minority spokesperson on finance Atuforsin hits back at Vice President Dr. Bawumia for describing their views as ignorant. Raymond Akwa is with him now. Let's go over to Raymond. Raymond, give us details.
Good morning, Beatrice. It's been an ending tale of what's supposed to be the biggest problem we have. It was the biggest release of a bond in this country. It was celebrated by government, but Galamsey actually obscured its success out there until the minority started raising questions they considered were crucial, which bordered on conflict of interest and possible abuse of even our laws in this country. The Ministry of Finance shot back with a very big bang, saying that this is not true. The very allegations of issuance difficulties, allegations of having not to go through the right processes in issuing this $2.2 billion biggest ever bond in the country. Well, there's response from the minority to the initial response from the Ministry of Finance. And don't forget, even before we go to the response from the minority to the Ministry of Finance, the Vice President has been speaking on this matter. Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia says it's ignorance, especially of people who have occupied the office before. A man who has been singled out in all of this for response and possibly attack because he was the one who did the delivery for and on behalf of the minority is Kesel Atuforsin, a member of parliament and the minority spokesperson on finance, a former deputy minister of finance too. He joins me with some answers specifically to the issues. So you've been in the ministry, but they say your appreciation and your reading of the economics of this particular bond issuance still lacks some substance. Indeed, the Vice President believes it is ignorant for you to pursue this particular path. What's your immediate response to these claims?
Thank you very much. And let me say that hearing these words coming from Vice President, I beg to say that it's not presidential. The voice sounded like him, and I have no reason to doubt that is the Vice President who spoke. But I doubt that this matter can come from the mouth of a Vice President because, one, it is not presidential, as I said, and clearly the fact that we should recognize that the minority has a big responsibility given to them by the Constitution of this Republic as a major stakeholder in governance to raise concerns when they think that things have not gone well for the betterment of this country. Our concerns are simple. I heard the Vice President talking about the fact that, one, the company concerned, Franklin Templeton, has been in the system. We've never denied that. We've said they've been in the system in the past. But what we are saying is the circumstances that this bond was issued is very much so very different from what we have seen in the past. Secondly, the Vice President made comment that in the past we issued a bond at 24%. Let me say clearly and ask the Vice President some few questions. Question one from me to the Vice President. Mr. Vice President, simple.
Okay, so I'll come to your questions, forgive me, because that's the detail that we will explore in this particular case. So you don't believe that the comments from the Vice President was presidential? Are they saying that it's not true? Did you display ignorance of the exact issues that we're talking about at this particular point in time? Since you've been in the ministry, did you deliberately feign knowledge of having to engage this same Franklin Templeton in times past?
I think that's what I was trying to explain, that he was saying that we've engaged them with 24% in the past. And what I'm trying to say is that 24% in the past, the tenor wasn't 7 years. The tenor indeed wasn't 15 years. So you cannot compare a 2-year bond at 24% or 3-year bond at 24% to, 19.75% tenor bond.
So you can also 19 for 15 years, you think is not a better deal than 24%? For how many years was it anyway?
He's making reference to a 2-year bond at 24%.
Yeah.
You cannot compare 2-year bond 24% to that of a 15-year bond at 19.75.
So the shorter the period, the higher the interest in this case.
That's it. Mm-hmm. Because you are locking it in for a very long time. And one will expect that under the yield curve principle, clearly, if it's going to be a longer dated bond, you pay lower than a short dated bond. That is the principle. That is how the market works.
But amount of money is involved, doesn't it also matter?
Yes, and then also you will notice that in the past, you didn't see one single transaction of $2.25 billion.
Because you're not ambitious enough, that's the claim.
It's not about ambitious, it's not about ambition. But the fact that, let us also remember, that at the time the bond was issued, inflation was in the middle, around 18-19%. Today we are talking about 13-point-something% inflation. Yeah. So can you compare that to this time? Can you compare the monetary policy rate then to today to the monetary policy rate? So comparing like with like. So treat him. He's asking us that we don't read. He should go back and read. Rather read the very comment that we've made. We've never said that we've never engaged Templeton in the past. We've engaged them in the past. So that is the concern. Let us go back to the issue. Yeah. You see, I'm sure you've heard the Honorable Haruna Idrisu coming out with a statement.
Manager just issued a statement. The Ministry of Finance, where you worked previously, which is actually predominantly made up of public servants that worked with you too, many of these, we understand, prepared this particular document which was released, is saying that, mindful of the fact that you particularly have been in the ministry, you should have, for instance, known that the issuance of the bond couldn't have been secretive. The procedure, the processes outlined are very clear. Yet you sought to create the impression that this was done in a secretive manner.
Okay. Let me raise 2 points here. One, I doubt the statement was coming from the Ministry of Finance and public sector.
When you say your doubt, I mean...
And I explain why I doubt it. Okay. You could see spelling mistakes everywhere in the statement. And I know Ministry of Finance, have worked with them, how professional they are in this statement.
Sorry, I mean, I've done a gross reading of this particular statement. Can you, yes, yeah, one specifically.
Look at the spelling of aspersions. It's wrongly spelled.
Aspersions?
Yes, it's wrongly spelled. It's there. I mean, check it. That's the statement.
And so even the Ministry of Finance, there can't be a mistake there?
I doubt. I have my doubt. I've worked there in the past, so that's what I'm saying. Okay. And secondly, let me point you to one fact.
JJ.
What the minority is saying is simple. We are not seeking to malign anybody. We have cause for concern. Our concerns are legitimate. Our concerns are needed. Very important, we have to make this clear to the public. We are saying that, one, contrary to what the Ministry of Finance is saying, that, one, the issuance calendar, advertised a 5 and a 7-year bond, a 7-year bond and a 15-year bond. It's untrue. You can check the issuance calendar from the Ministry, from the Bank of Ghana website. Okay. There's nothing like that. So one, that is not correct. Number two, we, in the minority statement that Honorable Haruna Idrisu has just signed and sent out, we made certain point that the guideline to the bond was issued around 5:37 p.m. on the 30th of March, at a time that we believe that most domestic investors may have gone to sleep or left their offices. We say this because you will notice that if it is a domestic bond, clearly the description is that you market it to local investors, domestic investors, whereas you open a window for others, like foreigners, to participate. So your focus is on domestic investors. But you are opening a window for foreigners to participate. If you send the issuance calendar, the guideline around 5:37 p.m., you open the transaction around 9 a.m. and you make an announcement to the public after you have opened it. This is our concern. What we're also saying is that you will notice clearly in the emails that they sent out, the Ghanaian investor, ordinary Ghanaian investor, had an announcement around 9:09 after the transaction has been opened. It was quickly done. Around 4:20 p.m., the issuance, the same day, around 4:20 p.m. on the same day, on the 31st, then issuance summary came.
Sorry, but they said they issued on March 30, not 31st, rather.
No. March 30th, around 5:37 p.m., an email was sent. was until that time that after the transaction has opened, that a public announcement was made.
Okay.
And the public announcement came after the transaction has been opened. Around 4:20 p.m., issuance summary was communicated to the public saying that the bond has been closed and the deal has been reached.
Is this abnormal?
It's abnormal.
Has never happened?
It's very abnormal. Has never happened under the book building.
The book runners who have actually run this particular process, they were the same you used previously.
But have they done it before? That's the question. This is different.
Have they not done it before?
Not at all. Not at all. We say this on authority. We challenge them to come out. Under a book building approach, you normally open the book minimum of 3 days to encourage competition.
So sorry. When you say they've not done it before, it means that they've not used this process before, but they're the same people who were running the process, even in 2015.
No, I'm saying that the book runners, those that the Ministry of Finance have contracted them to take us through book building, normally will allow 3 days. And these circumstances, it was done half a day.
Okay, but the substance of what they're saying is that beyond Franklin Templeton, there were 25 other institutions that were part of this process. Are you disputing that?
You see, let me make, even before, the Ministry of Finance failed to give us the names of the 25 other investors that took part and what holding are they holding.
Are you doubting that?
Yes. No, I've raised the question. So I was thinking that they would have come to the public by listing the names and the percentages. It doesn't matter, even if it's 1,000 people. What matters is that if one individual takes 95% of the existing bond, of the very bond that you have just issued of 2.25 billion, and you claim that you have done well, it's a matter that we have to question. If there's no competition, if you even have 100 people, each person has 1% or 0.1% and one person getting almost 96%. Do you think it's competitive? It's not. So the matter doesn't happen. But you see,
let me ask you this question, which is very important, because you insist that it was non-conventional. They believe it is still conventional. Now, can you cite a single bond issuance that followed the 3-day and not this particular single-day activity?
I've said that this is not the first time we've issued bond under book building approach. Okay. In the past, we go through those.
Which year specifically are you?
I can't be specific with 1 year, but I throw the challenge. They should come out and tell us that one single year, if there was a particular one from 2005 to date, we ever issued a bond and a book building approach, and we closed it in a half a day. It's not the case. That has never happened. That's never happened.
So you're talking about a substantive issue to do with this particular claim, and that substantive issue is the involvement of an individual. You connect to the finance minister specifically and insist by that connection that individual is supposed to have influenced the process.
What we are saying is that the press statement from the minority, we were very specific on issues. We raised the issue of the secrecy. We think the processes were not properly done. We went further on to ask that indeed we want to hear from the government to come out to either accept or deny the fact that we have established a relational interest between our finance minister, his good friend Trevor, and his associate, a company that he's associated with, Franklin Templeton. So we still await the minority, the Ministry of Finance and the government to clarify that position. We've made it clear.
Why? You don't think that the statement from the ministry clarifies this particular point?
The Ministry of Finance statement failed to mention that. There's no paragraph, there's no word that mentioned that. So we still throw it back. We are saying that the ministry should come again. They should come back to the people of this country and give us an explanation. That one, we've raised issues. They've talked about conflict of interest. They failed to talk about it. Two, we talked about the fact that the processes were fraud. We mentioned that the issuance calendar never captured this. They are saying it's captured it. I've proven it. That's not captured. We raised the issues that, one, clearly you will notice that the bond was opened before the public announcement was made. We raised the issue that, contrary to the statement that the bond was closed on the 3rd of April, we've said that no, the bond did not close on the 3rd of April. The bond closed on around 4:20 when the issuance summary was communicated to the public. And clearly, on the 3rd of April was only the date that settlement was made. So they should not confuse the two words.
Do you dispute the fact that Ghana is one of the 8 countries specifically who are included in the Geographical Diversification or Templeton's Emerging Bonds Fund, what they call it, strategy? You know that.
You see, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Very role of the gentleman you accuse, or probably you think has a linkage with the Minister of Finance, might be inconsequential.
But it doesn't matter. You see, we are seeing a process that is fraud. We are seeing a process that we think that.
Are there any laws that insist that it should be 3 days and not 1 day?
No, there are guidelines on the Bank of Ghana website.
When they issued the guidelines, was it abused in any way?
I think we've made our point. The point is simple. If you want a competitive bidding, do you think you can open a transaction without telling the public? And then you close half day, someone comes in, bid, by the time others want to get involved, you've closed the bidding and you think it's competitive?
My only difficulty is that you make it sound like this is an abuse of a legal or a specific law. And
what we are saying is that there are processes. Okay. In terms of the law, we've raised the constitutional issues. We've raised the issues around the PFM.
They dismiss that. They say that they are not bound by that particular rule to do so.
Well, I think the minority, we've made this clear. We are going to petition the Speaker. We want to ask for a full-scale inquiry on this matter.
You're not going to court? It sounds.
I think we laid out our options. The first option is for us to ask Parliament to investigate the process. And if that fails, we may go to Shraj. If that also fails, I think we have our options open to us.
Now, the understanding we've also had from the Ministry of Finance is the fact that perhaps it's just dust you're throwing into the people's eyes to actually offset the success that they have achieved with this particular process. That is endorsed by Dr. Bawumia's commentary of you not understanding or deliberately deciding to be deceitful and malicious in your thoughts on this matter. You are in the minority. You're seeking to lead the country someday. Do you have that intent?
It's a shame that others think otherwise. I think I alluded to the point that as a minority, we have a major stake in this government, and it's important for anyone not to think that we are trying to malign someone because we are raising legitimate concerns. What are the sources of this bond? The sources they claim is the fact that they've borrowed almost $3 billion within 100 days. Is that a success? A government that promised the people who are in opposition that they will not borrow? Is that a success?
If you look at the other way, they've reprofiled your debt in a way that is spread across a period, freeing some money for them to use in the interim when you even admit they were going to have a difficulty with the fiscal space.
Raymond, is this new? This is the first time Ghana is reprofiling its debt.
That is how they want to
You see, let me tell you something. It is not true that they are using the entire $2.25 billion to reprofile debt. They would have paid it into the sinking fund. Why are they keeping it in a different account? Why are they not paying it to the sinking fund?
Which account are they keeping it?
Oh, when you raise bond, you put it in the DDR, domestic debt restructuring account. So they are keeping it in the DDR, possibly to be sent to the consolidated T-main account for expenditure. So clearly, they are not using the entire money. And I've heard them say that they are going to use part of the money for the purposes of reprofiling. So it's not the fact agreed that they are going to use the entire money for the purposes of reprofiling. That is not the case.
Is the idea that Hasintap, who is with Franklin Templeton, is aiding the grouping Franklin Templeton itself, or even the current government is also helping this gentleman, Franklin Templeton, the institution, Franklin Templeton, actually siphon resources from the state? Is it your idea?
We haven't mentioned that. We haven't said that. We've not even mentioned the Hasintap name. I think at this stage what we are trying to say is that we want to find out the relational interest between Trevor and that of our finance minister.
So you wish it declared, and that would actually put you at trust?
Well, we expect that Ghanaians need to know. And we're asking the ministry.
The word potential in your statement, it doesn't mean, in your own estimation, that you have enough evidence to suggest that it is real and evident in this particular case.
You say potential because you want the public to establish, you want Ghanaian institutions to establish that point. At this stage, it's potential, and we're waiting for Ministry of Finance to deny or accept it.
But you're not saying that it is popularly known that he who assess must prove, if not proving the relationship to be one that is evident in this particular case?
Raymond, we've come out with the facts. We've managed to establish the relationship between Franklin Templeton and Trevor. We've also managed to establish the relationship between our finance minister and that of Trevor. And all what we are asking the Ministry of Finance and the minister to come and explain to the public that if indeed what we are saying is the case or it's not the case. Okay. At that point.
On the scale of relevance, which one is your most important claim, which you think has not been debunked yet?
On the scale of relevance, one, the issue of conflict of interest has not been debunked, obviously. Number two,
the issue of perceived or potential conflict of interest.
Potential conflict of interest, but conflict of interest, in our opinion. Number two, we have raised issues relating to the processes. Okay. We've talked about the fact that the Ministry of Finance statement lied and mentioned that the bond was advertised as part of the issuance calendar. That is not the case. Okay. We've mentioned that we've proven to them that indeed the guidelines to the bond was issued on the 30th around 5:37 p.m. We asked them to come and confirm that. We are asking the Ministry of Finance that we know that the bond was opened before public announcement was made. We are also telling the Ministry of Finance that the bond closed around 4:20 p.m. The issuance summary was communicated to the public around 4:20 p.m. on the 31st of March and not 3rd of April on a Monday. In fact, the 3rd of April on a Monday was the date that you have to do the settlement, and the two dates are not the same.
So the final point I want to explore with you on this particular issue is the way forward in this case. Should this deal be abrogated too little, too late at this point in time?
We are not going to that extent. We are not going to that extent in terms of...
If you suspect the processes were breached, the wrong thing was done, would it not be appropriate to actually make sure that you redo everything again?
You don't use suspicions to abrogate it. Yeah. We are asking for a full-scale inquiry. And we'll come out with recommendations. So we'll leave it at that.
Okay. What you did was suspicions. Is that what you're...
Yeah, so on News Desk on Joy News, as a couple of minutes ago, you were just watching that live interview with the minority spokesperson on finance, Ato Forson, and he's been hitting back at Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, describing his comments as not presidential. He also says that the interest on this particular bond, the $2.2 billion bond, cannot be compared with the previous ones that were issued earlier by government. Again, he says that the Ghanaian investor only had the announcement after the transaction was done, and that this particular issuance was not competitive. He went on to say that the ministry, as in the finance ministry, should come again, also because the processes were not properly done. And then again, the Ministry of Finance statement lied. And then he, like they said, the minority said earlier in their press conference, they want a full-scale investigation into this whole bond issuance. He would not say whether the deal should be abrogated or not, but says that there must be full-scale inquiry into the bond issuance. Moving on, Kente weavers at Bonre in the Ashanti region say they are looking forward to a manifestation of President Akufo-Addo's one district, one factory promise in their trade to ease the challenges that confront them. Key amongst their challenges is the rising cost of imported Kente yarn, which they say threatens the future of the enterprise and livelihood of the thousands of Ghanaians it employs. Love FM's Kwesi Debra visited the proverbial Kente town as President Akufo-Addo marked the first 100 days in office to engage the weavers.
Located in the Jusujabi municipality, Bonre, the birthplace of Asante Kente cloth, is 18 kilometers from Kumasi. It is arguably the largest producer of the traditional fabric in Ghana. Frank Sapon has been working at the Bonre Kente Weaving Center for over 20 years. He started this work soon after leaving junior high school. Frank has trained more than 20 people who are now plying their trade in other parts of the country. He is, however, worried about the rising cost of Kente cloth, a situation he blames on unavailability of yarns.
The
yarns are very expensive. It is usually imported, so the Kente is becoming expensive. If Nanado can set up a yarn factory, it will help boost sales. Between Force Kente Hene and now Pebo Ade Yeboah Santamre shares similar sentiments.
One problem we have at Bonre is the yarns that are used to make the Kente. We don't produce them here. We have to import them. And of late, some people are bringing them from China. As for the quality, we are not very sure. But would there be a source that will carry on coming? Will be coming all the time. That's the problem.
In the 2016 presidential elections, the NPP garnered 76.3% of the votes in the region, a 6% increase of 2012 figures. Frank says it was largely due to their belief in Nanado's one district, one factory policy to rescue the business. We voted for Nanado because we thought since he loves Kente, he will quickly come here to set up a yarn factory.
Because Kente when him Kente, Nana you will be over Kente pa.
Government has implemented some initiatives in the first 100 days. Though much is expected of government, Frank says Bonre has recorded massive sales in the first 100 days of Nanado.
NPP Bapawa, Yana, Omufra Kente.
When NPP comes into power, Kente sales go up. All of us have experienced it. Nana Yeboah Santamre and Frank believe it is too early to properly assess the president.
As a teacher, I don't mark scripts. I don't give marks when I've not read through the whole script. I've not experienced it. But this is a projection. I suspect that he can get through. So as of now, I give him 60%. Yeah.
They voted massively for Nanado Dankwa Kufuado in the 2016 elections because they believed that when he comes around, he'll be able to turn things around. And of course, they have seen it in the first 100 days. But they would want to see more from the government. Perhaps a massive Kente factory won't be a bad idea. Reporting from Bonre in the Jusu Jabi municipality of the Ashanti region, Kwesi Debra.